How does that even happen? How did two nations, allied to save the world, become the bitterest of enemies, locked in a struggle that could have ended everything? Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into one of modern history's greatest puzzles.
It's a huge question, right? But the answer, the one thing that drove both the United States and the Soviet Union to the brink and just kept them there for decades, well, it really all comes down to a single powerful word. Yup, fear. This one, primal emotion, is what shaped the entire modern world. You see, it wasn't some grand plan for a new war, and it definitely wasn't a simple case of good guys versus bad guys. It was something way more tragic, an escalating cycle of misunderstanding, where every single move was seen through a lens of deep, deep suspicion. To really get this, we've got to rewind a bit, back to World War II. The thing is, the US-Soviet alliance, it was never built on friendship or shared values, not at all. It was a partnership of pure necessity. I mean, think about it. Their only real bond was a shared enemy, Nazi Germany. So what happens when that common enemy is finally defeated in 1945? Well, the whole thing just shatters, and all those deep-seated fears they had of each other came roaring right back to fill the void. And this is where we get to the real psychological core of the Cold War. Once the shooting stopped, a totally new kind of battle began. This one wasn't fought with tanks, but in the minds of leaders in Washington and Moscow. Okay, and this concept right here is absolutely crucial to understanding everything that followed. It's kind of like this. Imagine two people in a pitch-black room. One person takes a step back, maybe just to get some space, but the other person just senses movement and thinks, oh no, they're getting ready to pounce. That is the Cold War in a nutshell. Every time one side tried to make itself feel more secure, it just made the other side feel more threatened. And what's so wild is when you look at what each side was afraid of, you can see how they're almost perfect mirror images. The Soviets look out and see American troops all over Western Europe, and the US with this terrifying new atom bomb. They feel surrounded, so they create a buffer zone in Eastern Europe. But the Americans, they look at that exact same buffer zone and see aggressive communist expansion. So you have both sides thinking, hey, we're just defending ourselves, while looking at the other guy and thinking, wow, they're being so aggressive. And that is the real tragedy of it all. Neither side could ever bring themselves to believe the defensive explanations the other offered. Every justification just sounded like a lie. And so this deep, unshakable mistrust, well, that became the new reality. Now, all this simmering mistrust, it wasn't going to stay just psychological for long. It quickly boiled over in the ruins of post-war Europe, turning the continent into the first major battleground of the Cold War. And here's that feedback loop in action. The US launches the Marshall Plan. To them, it's economic aid to stop unstable countries from falling to communism. But Stalin, he sees it as a direct economic attack, an aggressive move to lure countries away from him. So what's his response? He tightens his grip even harder. Which leads us to the Berlin blockade. This was a classic fear-driven move. It was an attempt to apply immense pressure to force the Western powers out of Berlin, which was deep inside the Soviet zone, mind you, but to do it without firing a single shot. From the American and British perspective, how else could you see it? This looked like an undeniable aggressive move to starve a city of 2 million people into submission, a clear violation of all the post-war agreements. But from the Soviet perspective, it was a necessary defense. The Western powers were uniting their zones, creating a powerful new West German state, backed by American money right on their doorstep. For a nation that had just lost over 20 million people to a German invasion, this felt like an intolerable threat. The Western response was just a logistical miracle and a powerful show of resolve. The Berlin airlift kept the city alive. But to the Soviets, it was just another display of Western power deep in their territory. The lines were now hardened. The Cold War wasn't just a policy anymore. It was a physical reality. So, with tensions at a breaking point in Europe, and with communism's victory in China in 1949, a lot of people around the world just braced themselves for what felt inevitable: World War III. It's the most important question of the whole era. Given the intense fear, the aggressive posturing, the clear lines being drawn, what stopped the Cold War from turning into a devastatingly hot one? Well, paradoxically, the answer lies in an even greater fear. In 1949, the same year the Berlin blockade ended, the Soviets successfully tested their own atomic bomb. The American nuclear monopoly was over, and a new, world-altering terror had just entered the equation. They called it MAD, for Mutually Assured Destruction, and the idea was as terrifying as it sounds. The destructive potential of these new weapons created a kind of fear so absolute, it acted as a powerful brake on direct conflict. Suddenly, all-out war wasn't winnable anymore. And this brings us to the central paradox of the Cold War. Fear wasn't just some simple destructive force. It played this incredibly complex and contradictory role. It was both the poison that started the conflict and, in a strange way, the antidote that prevented its ultimate escalation. I mean, just look at how it played out. Fear of a common enemy held them together. Then, that same fear mutated into deep mistrust once the enemy was gone. That mistrust transformed their defensive actions into perceived threats. And finally, the ultimate fear of nuclear annihilation actually prevented the very war that the initial fears made seem so inevitable. And that's really the ultimate takeaway here. It's a powerful and humbling reminder that these massive global conflicts, they don't always start because one side is purely evil. They can start and keep going because of a fundamental, tragic misunderstanding of motives, all fueled by insecurity. This history really forces us to ask a critical question about our own time. As new global tensions rise, it's worth considering, have we truly learned the lessons of fear? Do we really understand how easily defensive actions can be seen as aggression, and how quickly that feedback loop can spin completely out of control?